Hello, I am Dr. G, and today I'm going to give you a glimpse of how an economist sees the world. While we can look at the same things, we probably don't see the same things, and that means we think about them in different ways. I'm going to start with real-world examples, even things that happened to me. I'm going to talk about fruit, bread, flying in times of COVID. I'm going to talk about the climate, even getting vaccinated. Then, I'll show you two examples of how econ snuck up on me in series and in movies when I was chilling. What? My goal is to give you a short tour of what you can expect from our class, and that is to use the tools of economics to learn to view the world as an economist, and to use that skill to make better informed decisions. Seriously, it's like a superpower. Before we get to the fun stuff, what is economics? If you've never taken an econ course before, totally fine. Economics is a social science that studies decisions. Decisions of individuals, businesses, governments, nations, doesn't matter. It all comes down to people like you or me going about their day trying to be happy. Econ offers a toolkit for analyzing those decisions, even making predictions. This is a picture I took at my local Safeway. Do you see there's an empty spot on the shelf? They were out of red raspberries that day. Why? They were on sale, 97 cents per package. Other people got psyched about them? No berries for me. Economists call this an increase in quantity demanded, and it is driven by a change in price. Businesses know we react like that. Why do you think there's always stuff on sale? You knew this, right? Here you're seeing the bread and pasta aisles from that same Safeway from March of 2020. This was shortly after the WHO declared COVID-19 a pandemic. Again, empty shelves, but now the story is different. People panicked and they rushed to the stores to grab whatever basic necessities they could. I bet your grocery store looked like this too. Online, not much different. Lysol, alcohol, wipes, stuff was sold out everywhere, and what was available? Crazy pricey. People also went nuts for toilet paper. Do you remember? For a while, stores rationed the number of rolls people could buy. Totally nuts. We will be talking about what causes shortages and surpluses in our course, and that's typically a price that's failing to match the quantity buyers want to buy to the quantity sellers want to sell. Aside from the toilet paper surge, this behavior is pretty normal, and economists can predict it well. You see, when national disasters occur, people have a tendency to stock up on basic necessities. We call this panic buying, and it comes both from people wanting to be prepared and from people irrationally freaking out. But it makes sense. Result? Long lines, empty shelves. As economists, we describe this as an increase in demand, and it's driven by a change in consumer perception and not by price, like in my raspberry example. Now, these photos, I took them at the San Francisco airport in June of 2020. SFO probably looked like any airport around the country. Empty. At that time, global flight volume decreased dramatically, as did the number of total people passing through security at all airports. People were too afraid to fly. I know I was. Were you? So while the pandemic made people want a lot of some stuff, like groceries, it made them want a lot less of others, like air travel, office attire, even gas, as millions of people started working from home. This is a phenomenon economists call decrease in demand. But our story is not yet complete. We haven't looked at the supply side, and that's when we think of, for example, the airlines as businesses. During the pandemic, airlines grounded many planes, and they let go or furloughed many pilots and crews. Hear this. At the peak of the first wave of the COVID-19 crisis, airlines parked around 2/3 of the total global fleet. Many planes never returned, and neither did the pilots or the crews. How can airlines put planes in the air without pilots or crews? They can't. And economists will call this a decrease in supply. Makes sense now, doesn't it? Okay, so you're hearing me talk about supply and demand, and most people have heard about them. Maybe you have too. So here's another example. Do you remember remember hearing about the cyber attack that shut down the Colonial Pipeline in May of 2021? The pipeline transports about 50% of the fuel consumed on the East Coast. So it's a real big deal. Immediately, my mind starts picturing supply decreasing. On the demand side also, you probably know what I'm going to say. Consumers reacted as expected, and they rushed to fill their tanks. Long story short, major fuel shortages in places like Virginia, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas. Things got so bad that 17 states issued an emergency declaration, and the federal government had to step in. You know, econ deals with a lot more than just supply and demand, shortages and surpluses, and some of it can get polarizing. Before I jump to the next bit, I want to tell you a secret about how economists think, and that is, in life, in order to get something, we have to give up something else. No such thing as a free lunch. Are you ready? Let's talk about the environment. In August of 2021, the United Nations published a report saying global climate change is accelerating. The cause? Us. Human-driven emissions of greenhouse gases. The good news is the more humans reduce emissions this decade, the more livable Earth will be for the rest of this century. But, always a but. The bad news is that protecting the Earth, protecting the environment, will mean higher costs and lower competitiveness for some industries. Some even say it will cost jobs. We'll call this a trade-off, when having more of something means having less of something else. Politicians, they typically make these hard choices. Us, the economists, our job is to flesh out the consequences of the different courses of action and not offer our judgments or opinions on what is better. So keep that in mind. Here's an example of these hard choices in action. Over the 4 years of the Trump administration, major climate policies were dismantled, and about 100 rules governing clean air, water, wildlife, and toxic chemicals were rolled back. These actions were expected to increase greenhouse gas emissions over the next decade, and thousands of extra deaths from poor air quality each year. That's right. Exposure to pollution, and especially to particulate matter, causes major health issues and premature deaths. The Biden administration rolled back the rollbacks and effectively built up the capacity to advance the climate change agenda. Why am I talking about this? In econ, we call pollution a negative externality. An externality occurs when someone's action impacts someone else. Pollution is a negative externality because it imposes a cost on someone else. Air pollution from coal-fired plants, for example, is linked with asthma, cancer, heart and lung problems, acid rain, global warming, etc. There's value to health, but there's value to economic activity too. So how do we decide how much clean air do we want and how much pollution can we bear? It's a tough question. There are benefits and costs to both. In other words, there are trade-offs. Speaking of externalities, I want to talk about vaccination for a moment. Flu vaccination, measles vaccination, COVID-19 vaccination, doesn't matter. For starters, vaccines are a personal choice, and one where many of the benefits accrue to the individual. For example, science has shown that many COVID-19 vaccines keep people from getting the virus, keep them from getting seriously ill or die if they do catch it. We call them private benefits. They accrue to the person who got the shot. But vaccines help to protect the people around us as well, particularly those severely at risk, like older adults or those with underlying medical conditions. So they offer external benefits too. In econ, we call this a positive externality. When people choose whether to get vaccinated, they often consider private benefits, those that accrue to themselves. But governments need to consider the social benefits. Why do you think many states offered beer or money for people to get vaccinated? Because they wanted more people to get vaccinated because of these social benefits. My point with these comments is to shed light on the fact that a basic understanding of economics is fundamental for making well-informed decisions. including as a voter or to get vaccinated. I am almost done here. I want to finish my intro with 2 videos. The first is a segment of a movie I watched during a flight. I liked it so much that I watched it back to back. Don't judge.
Okay, here's what you need to understand, all right? It's not about getting Eleanor to like you. It's about getting her to respect you, all right? Right now, she just thinks you're some, like, undeserving, clueless, gold-digging...
Yeah, I got it.
...trashy, unrefined banana. Yellow on the outside, a white on the inside.
I know what a banana is.
When in reality, you're like a super sophisticated, smart professor of freaking game theory. Show her that side of you, you know?
You're right.
Damn straight, I'm right. It's fake land, I'm always right.
Yeah, she's like trying to play a game of chicken with me. Where she's like coming at me and like thinking I'm gonna swerve like a chicken.
But you can't swerve.
I'm not gonna swerve, not for her.
No.
I love Crazy Rich Asians, and I was thrilled to learn that Rachel was an econ professor at NYU, and especially to see her talk about game theory with Pei Lin. And that's yet another topic of econ that we're going to cover. Here, they talked about the chicken game, who will give in first, Rachel or Nick's mother, Eleanor. If you watch the movie, you know how that went. Last one now. This is Breaking Bad, the story of Walter White, a high school chemistry teacher who becomes a meth mogul.
Well, we're set. Boys are ready. Gonna be some mad cheddar, yo. Cheddar, Mr. White. Fat stacks, dead presidents. Cash money. Gonna own this city.
We're not charging enough.
What?
Corner the market, then raise the price. Simple economics.
Walter understood the power of a monopolist. If you're the only seller in town and consumers have no substitutes, you can jack up your price. Simple economics. I hope you enjoyed learning how economics sneaks up on you and how thinking like an economist is a valuable skill for understanding the world and for making better informed decisions. Thank you for watching.